2016 status. Turn it over to our city administrator, general finance.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. We are gathered here tonight for our third special committee of the whole workshop of 2016. You'll recall we had a town center Heritage Commons planning workshop back in March in this room. Last month we were over at Concordia University to talk about other issues related to the Mequon Town Center. And this brings us back to City Hall here in mid-July to get a head rolling start on budget prep for 2017. Tonight's agenda, as indicated on your packet materials, we'll talk a little bit about where we are here in fiscal year 2016. We've got a little discussion regarding debt service and how that's all playing out relative to the city's long-term financial performance. We're going to talk about capital funding, some of the needs that we've identified, and some of our recommendations related to managing the city's assets, the various assets that we're responsible for administering. And then we've got some considerations that we'd like to roll into for fiscal year 2017, get you thinking about some things, and we've got some interactive exercises that Tom's going to be overseeing towards the end of the meeting. And then we'll try and wrap up with some of the future steps and maybe get consensus on when the Appropriations Committee would like to meet in October. Why are we meeting tonight? Well, some of the input that I got back in February during my evaluation with all of you was that we need to provide the budget preview earlier in the year relative to what we did last year. You'll recall we did the 3 SWOT analyses across all of the city departments. We did that in September as we rolled into Appropriations Committee. I think it gave you a lot of background information into the ins and outs, the nuts and bolts of what we do on a day-to-day basis. But the feedback was, let's get going earlier. So here we are in July talking about it now. There was also an indication in some of the feedback that I got that we want to provide long-term forecasting of our financial situation. So we're rolling that into tonight's meeting. Also some feedback regarding our road conditions, how we prioritize roads, and looking at our long-term goals from a capital standpoint. So that's also on tonight's agenda. And then there was also a comment about reducing or looking at our debt load on a comprehensive level, and I think we're going to fold that into tonight's discussion as well. So that's sort of what's driving tonight's agenda, being responsive to the feedback that was provided to me and to the staff through me, and so we'll see where the discussion goes. I'm going to turn it over to Tom, and he's going to talk a little bit about this most recently completed fiscal year, and then talk about where we are in fiscal year 16.
Right, so thanks, Will. So just to recap, for 2015, we had our audit partner in June to discuss the results of the audit for FY15. That was part of our comprehensive annual financial report, and the council accepted that audit back in about a week ago tonight. Just very brief summary that for the general fund last year, the revenues were $110,000 more than we had budgeted. The expenditures were $122,000 less than we budgeted, so that's a net surplus, if you will, of $232,000. We had budgeted use of $300,000 of fund balance, so when you net that all together, we came up with a deficit for the year of $68,000. Part of that audit report came up with recommendations for staff to consider going forward, and one was in the area of utility accounting, that the firm thought the city could do, get more education and get more support staff to help us manage the 2 utilities that the city has. We're also tracking a Government Accounting Standards Board pronouncement, number 45, that has to deal with other post-employment benefits. So the finance staff is working on that actuarial study. We're talking to a couple of consultants to deal with that for this year as well. In your packet, you had a couple of dashboard pages, if you will, of 2016 year-to-date. For the first 6 months of the year, I've broken out the major on this page, major revenues by category. And it's kind of hard to read with this picture, but I broke the results year-to-date into 3 categories. Green would be that we had either a positive variance, or I don't think we're going to be in any kind of an issue by year end. The yellows are a variance, negative variance of about 0 to -5%, and the red ones are a variance of more than 5% on the year-to-date budget. So on the revenue side, you see maybe 2 items that we're watching. Permits and inspections year-to-date are tracking below budget, but in talking with development staff, we think we're going to make that up in the last 6 months of the year with a couple of major projects coming online.
Tom, in doing the year-to-date percentage, did you simply take the annual budget, divide it in half, or was there some expectation on timing? Because obviously, this is a half-a-year report, but
Right.
taxes come in more at the beginning of the year than late. I mean, trying to figure out how you
Right.
calculated the percentage.
It's just simple math.
Straight line calculation.
Year-to-date divided by the total budget.
And is the comparison to the right what would have been at the mid-year also then?
Those are the same numbers for the same point in time a year ago, or
Okay,
2 years
thank
ago, et cetera. So on the revenue side, total revenues were about 57% of budget. I don't see anything real concerning at this point in time that is a material amount of money in absolute dollars. With the exception of the permits, I think we're going to be okay there by year end. The other revenue line includes things like cell tower leases, cable TV franchise, or what used to be called franchise agreements, and that includes the $300,000 of fund balance that the city appropriated for the 2016 budget. If we don't use that, we would end up below budget, just like we did in 2015. On the expenditure side, same kind of high-level analysis, year-to-date actual numbers, excuse me, divided by total budget for the year. Most departments are in the green. We've got a couple of watch items with the assessor department and HR, but we think that's just timing of expenses, and by year end, we'll probably be okay. The council one is kind of a same example where we had expenses like Fund Before the Fourth, which is a pretty good ticket item that got pulled forward into, we paid that in late June. So by year end, I would think the council budget would be in pretty good shape.
But isn't that typically paid before Fund Before the Fourth?
It is, but it distorts the tracking of how theoretically you'd be at 50% of your budget, but when you have a $10,000,
Yeah, I'm just wondering why we're $6,000 or $7,000 or $8,000 more than the last 3 years at mid-year. I mean, that can't be Fund Before the Fourth. There's got to be some other.
Yeah,
Is
there's-
that the election or?
no, it's
the clerk's budget.
miscellaneous expenses for, I think we bought candy and we did some other stuff to get ready for Fund Before
I
the
think we
Fourth.
purchased some shirts. We also had to purchase some flags for the Memorial Day Parade, which we didn't have to purchase last year. So things just rolling forward. I don't know that our spend is going to be at this rate going forward.
Right.
We should discuss whether we have purchases like that, if they're going to go outside of budget. But
Any questions on the 2016 year-to-date before I move ahead?
So-
Right.
So as Tom has outlined, 2015 was a good year. We finished ahead on revenues and we finished below on expenditures. And so far in 2016, at the midpoint, we're trending very well on the expense and the revenue side as well. Just to recap some of the major initiatives that we're pursuing as part of FY 2016, this is kind of the programmatic aspect of our fiscal year budget. Obviously, we broke ground on the Public Works facility earlier this year. We're in year 2 of a 3-year borrowing on road improvements. We just implemented emergency medical dispatch within the police and fire departments within the last 30 days, so that's now up and running. We're in the process of converting our patrol vehicle fleet to sport utility vehicles to account for some of the space needs that have become apparent over the last several years. Tomorrow, we'll be conducting first-round interviews for the building inspection supervisor position that was authorized as part of the 16 budget. You all know that we're going through a conversion to a new agenda management system, which we think in the next 30 to 60 days is going to have videos of all of our council meetings online, which can be indexed and searched. Same thing for the Plan Commission. And then we're going through a city website upgrade, and we'll be actually meeting with some firms and going through some demos as early as next month. We're hoping to award a contract on the new website, bringing that forth to all of you in September.
Is any of that going before a committee? What
Likely-
you're doing, how you're doing it, who you're getting an RFP to, or is that purely being done by staff?
At this point, it's purely being done by staff. The RFP was out on the street in May, and we've gotten 13 responses back, and we're now going through the evaluation of those responses. So no decisions have been made, but we would anticipate a recommendation coming through, likely public welfare, and then coming up to the full council. So we're documenting every step that we take. We're documenting all of the actions and the decisions that are being made. You'll have access to all of that information as we roll forward. And that's really just to award the contract to the vendor that we'll then be working with to actually design and structure the website. And that's where we really see the input and the feedback from the council coming into play. We're not necessarily designing the website before we award the contract. We're going to get the vendor on board, and then we're going to have roundtable sessions and outreach sessions with the Business and Economic Development Commission, the Common Council, some of our other stakeholders, the Chamber of Commerce, et cetera, to get some feedback on how the website should look, and then we're going to build it and go live.
I think as we're coming forward with the website, that's been, every year that I've been on council, that's been a hot topic, that our website, definitely needs an upgrade. I'd like to see in some committee prior to a vote on awarding a contract, just features, benefits, upgradability, on what some of the RFP items are in, just maybe even just have a subcommittee of the council review that. I think that'd be a very effective use of our time, and I think it would help streamline the process for you.
Okay.
But I think council input on some of that prior to just coming forward to vote on who we're going to award the contract to without a lot of those details. I see whatever committee that's going through struggling a little bit if we don't have a few of them prior to that first committee meeting and then
So
council.
maybe a committee of the whole meeting during a council meeting, or,
That would be appreciated.
okay. All right, we can do that.
Cool.
Are the demos just examples of previous work, or are they preparing something for us specifically?
Well, we would anticipate, as I mentioned, we've had 13 responses. We're probably going to shortlist it down to a half dozen or 8 companies that are going to be invited in for half-day demonstrations. And then the interdepartmental committee that's been formulated is going to sit down and actually go through a very formalized rating process relative to each of the companies that's invited into demo. But what we're going to try and do is get a sense of the functionality and the features and the bells and whistles that each of these firms provides relative to their websites, and some of the functionalities and the features that we can take advantage of that we're currently not here in Mequon. So it's going to be a very exhaustive process.
Just surprised historically when people have been hired, groups have been hired, at least, yes, staff has been involved, but so has the council, and maybe so have other stakeholders, and this sounds like it's become a staff-driven process rather than involving other people who may have an interest in what happens. But I'm not sure that today we're about the budget, but I do have some concerns about that as long as the website upgrade is mentioned tonight.
I think that came up on committee of the whole a few times. I don't think staff's just running with this loose. This has been a suggestion by council on multiple occasions.
Not to do it, I'm talking
Okay.
about the actual
RFP.
interviewing and the what have you.
Sure.
I think you may want to consider, when you get it down to the final 3, a short presentation by all 3 in front of council, because I have a feeling with all of our experiences in our own workplace and things with different websites, we might be helpful. Just
Okay.
an idea.
All right. We can certainly look at that.
You can participate in the interview if you like, correct?
Well,
Council members can sit
I mean,
in
we
on
can
the-
structure it any way the council desires. I guess one of the concerns I would have is turning demonstrations into publicly noticed meetings where we have agendas posted and minutes taken. There are proprietary aspects to showing your product to a potential client, and there may be concerns that we may not get the full reveal, so to speak, relative to a potential vendor's features and functionalities. And so it's a fine line between publicly noticing demonstration meetings for 6 or 8 firms that are going to come in and show us their websites, and maybe getting some of the feedback or representation from the council during these demonstrations. Maybe the council might appoint 1 or 2 representatives to sit in on the demonstrations and report back to the council.
As long as those 2 individuals were not on the same committee and
Right.
therefore
I
require
participated in,
notice.
I think I was the only one that was there.
I don't think that's an issue with the website developers and that, to come in and show us, because we're not asking for any proprietary information from them on how they do that and how that gets done. We're just looking at the final products and looking about what their capabilities are doing inside of there. Everybody has their own ways of writing code, source code in that. We're not asking them for that, and they're not gonna be showing us that. So having a showing where the whole common council will be there and take a look at it for 3 or 4 people that are coming, 3 or 4 firms that are coming forward, if they feel it's that important that they can't show it to us, then we shouldn't be considering them anyways.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, when it's really down to the last 3, brief presentations, I mean, 10 minutes apiece. Because I know we're invited to go to the meetings, and I have no problem if aldermen do that, but only certain aldermen, I mean, you're saying they're half-day apiece on, like 8 groups. Very few aldermen might have that time, and then it's always the same alderman helping on those things they can. But I think all the aldermen might want to be, if we can just keep it brief at a normal meeting. That, or even a public welfare, even a subcommittee, I'd be okay with, but it's just an idea.
Yeah, and Will, as you're doing it, the 2 things that I'd be looking for as a council member is upgradability, and mobile responsiveness. A lot of times when you're getting into the bells and the whistles, they go through the entire fluff presentation of how cool the sports car is, but then it's got like an old used engine in it, and the upgradability is a brand-new vehicle. You want to make sure that at least those tools are kind of spelled out. I would be asking what platform would be built on if I was one of the committee members. So I would be asking something moderately proprietary, because I at least understand which platforms are easier to work with and how they intermix. I have people I can call and ask questions on, and how some of these things work. And I have no doubt that you're going to do an excellent job of that evaluation. I think you're getting some feedback from council that we'd like somebody involved in it. I think my recommendation might be to identify which committee this is going to go through. If it is public welfare, figure out if, a representative from that group would like to sit in on some meetings, or if the mayor would like to reach out along with you to a council member to maybe work through some of even the summaries as we're getting down to the last couple questions, or come up with a core group of questions to make sure that you've got your bases covered in these interviews. Maybe if we can get that into a committee, that would be great. So that we don't come to you as a council after the fact with questions that you hadn't thought of asking, and that's, suddenly are very important.
Okay.
Whatever we can do to help you as well, but still get the end product that we're looking for the community.
I've gotten a fair amount of feedback here. Is the consensus to bring the council in when we've kind of whittled it down to
At some
the
point.
finalists?
That's what I think.
Yes.
Is that a fair statement?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. Okay. Moving right along.
So we wanted to just show you kind of a snapshot of time of the last 10 years of what revenues and expenses look like in 15 versus 9 years prior or 10 years prior. So one of the couple of things that I wanted to call to your attention was the decline of intergovernmental revenue over the last 10 years. State shared revenue or state aid has been declining over time, and we anticipate it's going to continue to decline. Things like licenses and permits have become a bigger part of the revenue pie for the city of Mequon. Investment income, as you probably know from your own personal experience, has really gone down with the trend in rates. I think some people, including myself, thought that rates would pop back up after a couple years, but they have not. And taxes obviously is getting to be the plug, if you will, of trying to balance a budget going forward. On the expenditure side, we grouped, where auditors grouped city expenditures into these major categories: public safety, public works, general government, et cetera. And you can see that subtotal line, the first one there, the general operations of the city has barely changed in 10 years. We've gone from a little bit over 15 million to 15.2 over 10 years. The proportionate share of departments like general government has declined over time, both in absolute dollar terms and in relative percentage. Yet things like public works has done the same thing. We've spent less on public works, and it's a smaller piece of the expense pie.
What is community enrichment?
That is things like parks and the library.
Okay.
So the major increases, though, is what we spend on capital. In this case, it's mostly roads, and what we spend on debt service. That's what we really want to talk about tonight, is the increase in debt service over time is almost tripled in absolute dollar amounts, and it's eating up a bigger percentage of a larger pie. So,
Can I ask you a question?
sure.
Public Works, is that just is that labor, or does that include their projects?
That is everything you hear about in the public works area. So it's
Drainage, et cetera?
sure, it's the
Okay.
mechanic, the fleet maintenance, it's highway shop, it's all those things that snow
Okay, so
plowing,
it's-
materials, everything like that.
Because back in 2006, we might have started doing debt for roads, but I'm not sure. Is there a chance that that includes the roads too, that 40?
No,
Okay,
that would be under capital if we were spending money for
okay,
roads.
thank you.
They would have put that capital expenditures into that bucket.
Here's just a triangle that shows the personnel breakdown of full-time equivalents across the organization. And as I've come to understand, coming into the organization, the priorities for the Common Council as we've headed into every budget cycle are ensure public safety, maintain our infrastructure, and keep taxes low. And I think this triangle depicts the fact that we're aligned from a staffing standpoint very much with those priorities. Public safety is where almost half of our full-time personnel are allocated to across both police and fire. And that public safety number does not include the paid-on-call firefighters. We've got about 60 paid-on-call firefighters here with the city, but they're all paid on call. They're not formal employees of the city that are here every day. Public Works, you can see, runs about 40 full-time equivalents across our second largest department. And the other is everything else. It's assessing, it's human resources, it's inspections, it's finance, it's administration, it's the clerk's office, it's legal, it's IT. Some, a couple of those FTEs in that green triangle are some of our contracted employees, like Brian and Len McCaw and Mike Groda and our code enforcement inspector. So you can see our staffing aligns with the priorities that have been identified by the council over the last several fiscal years, where public safety and public works gets the lion's share of the resources here in the city.
Can I ask a question? From the last slide, you don't have to go back to it, but the big increase in debt service, does that include, is all debt service in there, including TIF payments?
Yeah, this is general obligation debt, not the sewer fund.
Okay, for example, the tax incremental districts that we've created that are largely getting serviced by the new tax increment that's come in to cover it, that's in that $3 million number, right?
Right.
So if you were really comparing apples to apples, you need to take that debt out if it's being covered by new development that was created by it, and look at, has other debt service been constant, since that has a revenue source that was generated and goes to paying it. Maybe you'll cover that when we get to debt service.
Right. So just to recap what we did earlier this year with the Public Works Facility bond issue, as you probably recall, we went to market in March of 16. We sold 8.9 million worth of general obligation debt for a term of 15 years. We're going to pay that off in the year 2031. As the staff memos said, the tax rate impact to service that debt is between 14 to 16 cents per thousand per year for the life of the bonds. It's roughly the principal and interest cost on the Public Works Facility is about $688,000 a year. The benefits of having a new facility is that's going to combine, 3 different disparate facilities into one location, so we're looking for some synergies there. And then vacating those older buildings on Mequon Road is going to open the door for Town Center west of the railroad tracks. For the road program, we borrow on average about 1.7 per year to do either road reconstruction or road maintenance, significant maintenance. Engineering gave us some facts that were pretty interesting. Asphalt prices have almost doubled from 1995 till now. Our SDR rating has gone up, actually from, in subdivisions, from 6.4 to 6.5, and a pretty good jump from in main roads from 5.7 to 6.5. And then the lane miles that we have, 30 years have gone from about 164 to 210.
Why do the years keep changing? I mean, you're using different beginning comparison numbers for different things.
For impact.
Yeah.
The benchmark year should be the
shouldn't it
same
kinda-
year across the board.
Shouldn't it be constant? I mean, if we're going to compare 2006 or whatever it was as far as expenditures, shouldn't that where we'd be looking at the rest of these things?
Well, we had
the
different,
road knowledge, I was in
different
high school.
contributors on this, so we didn't really think of it from that macro point of view, so.
And some of it may be attributable to the fact that we may have not been measuring something back in 1984 as we were on other.
Well, yeah, but you were in
It's gonna be such a
2006, which
relevant.
is where all the budget numbers were, whatever that year was.
Okay.
I mean, to us, you gotta make some of this a little more relevant to it, that instead of that big of a spread inside it. And I know you're not doing that, but it kind of looks like the fact that you're trying to make it seem that it's bigger than it is by using different years. So if you picked a year, whatever year it was, and you said it's year 2000 or whatever it is, and use that extrapolation for each one of the years, 2000, I think would hold a little more credence.
I don't think we had SCR in 2000.
2000 or 06.
Whatever year.
Yeah.
Just
2006.
picked out in
Yeah,
2006.
2006.
So here's a chart I wanted to just show
Yeah.
a couple of things related to debt for the city, and this is just GO debt, and yes, it includes the TIF debt.
1984.
But I'm showing in 3-year jumps here what principal and interest looked like in 2011 through what I think it's going to look like in 2026. The blue bars are principal, existing principal. The red is interest expense. That's already for debt we have already incurred. And the green blocks are, assuming we go out to market every 2 years to borrow 2 years worth of road construction for the foreseeable future, at today's rates, at today's prices, the green bars would be the next time we go to market in 2018 to borrow for 2019 and 20. The green bar would be the principal and interest on that new debt. A couple years later, we'd borrow some more for the next couple years worth of roads, et cetera. So we've gone from 2011, total principal and interest of about $2 million a year to an average of about $4 million a year for principal and interest, and along with future debt. So is everybody with me on this?
But that includes all the money borrowed for TIF also, right?
Sure, but the TIF debt's gonna be declining every year from now on too. So-
Yeah, I'm just saying that the jump from 2011 to 2014, I'm guessing that a big hunk of that was TIF expenditure, which gets repaid through TIF income. Really isn't comparing apples to apples as far as city capital improvements that are paid for out of the general fund.
Sure, but it
I
also,
mean, to be able
At
to
some-
understand straight across.
at some point
Take TIF
though,
out of this and
yeah.
see what it looks like.
Yep.
Go ahead.
the trend would still be the same, that we're on a cycle of borrowing money for every 2 to 3 years with the roads.
So let me ask a question. Does that include that stuff in the TIF?
Pardon?
Does that include the borrowing from the TIF?
Sure. It's geo debt.
And the question is,
The
is this,
taxes that we get, that you reflected in revenue are also, the TIF income is reflected in those taxes, right?
No, that's shown in the cap project fund. That's not part of general obligation. That's not part of this.
Okay.
I'm not only showing the expenses, not the revenues.
I mean, I'm just trying to see if the city's staying relatively constant in its overall debt obligations for city projects and city infrastructure, city capital. And when you throw in the TIF expenditures in there, it kind of skews that. I mean, from my perspective, if it stayed steady forever, that's not all that bad. If it's increasing, that would be bad. This looks like it increased drastically. That wouldn't be good, but it increased with an expenditure, or with a revenue increase at the same time, presumably. And therefore, that it isn't necessarily bad.
Also, what happened is we borrowed roads for 10 years on 10-year borrow cycles, so now we're fully invested in borrowing for roads. So instead of spending 1.7 million on roads each year, which we do, it's borrowed funds now instead of tax funds. So we've increased borrowing by, let's say, 1.7 a year, but we're not spending that in the operating.
Right, the 4 million is the new normal, because as that old road debt falls off, new road debt will be coming on. And
Probably get progressively.
if we never do another TIF, all we'll have left is road debt and the public works facility. And it'll still be at that $4 million level.
And one of the key takeaways from this slide, if you look at 2017, which is the budget that we're going into and the budget that we're planning, that red bar is equivalent to $1 million in interest money. $1 million in interest payments for 2017. And that's a number that we've got to wrestle with going into next year's budget, because debt service is part of the tax levy.
But I just want to mention one thing that in the last few years I've noticed with debt is the rate has been extremely low, and I think that's one reason we've been taking advantage of it. I mean, it's not 13% like it might have been.
No, it's not.
In the
It's not.
early 80s.
And what we want to do here tonight is just share this information with you so that you're armed with this data and this information as you go into Appropriations Committee and you're asked to make decisions and determinations and adoptions of the budget that staff is going to be bringing forth.
Can you highlight for me why, what's causing 2023 to go up and then 2026 to start coming back into balance? What's planned for that? Because the future debt amount is significant in both of those cases.
Right, you can see it's kind of a picket fence effect. I didn't spend as much time modeling this as like an Ellers would do, where they try to squeeze in debt in some years where we have a little notch.
It's been 10 years now.
I basically
Now we borrow.
took the debt we would borrow in 2020 and replicated it every couple of years to add it on to the end of the list. So I didn't assume interest rates would go up. I didn't assume we'd spend any more for roads than we do today. And, but I did also play with the models about how I could pull debt into little notches or take out peaks. So,
But I mean,
but the-
interest rates are going to go up,
And
and
it-
roads are going to get more expensive.
So
the other
this
hand.
will just look worse.
Right.
Well,
Right.
Right.
Taking a look at this, I mean, you go from 2012, I see the borrowing side, I don't know exactly what that is that about whatever the dollar amount is? But in 2023, you're tripling that amount, and in 2024, it looks like you're quadrupling that amount. 4 times the amount. Your green is your future borrowing, correct?
Yes,
So, in a 3-year period, 3 times the amount you're looking to borrow or more, what is that?
6-year period.
Is it right? Yeah.
Those are 3-year increments.
Right, because by 2026, we've gone through a couple more borrow cycles, and while that existing debt starts falling off, it gets replaced by additional new borrowing cycles.
That's what I'm asking. What is the new borrowing for that? You've got, in 2012, I mean, in 2020, you've got that amount there. Now in 2023, you've got, it's gonna be like 3 times the amount you're gonna borrow, future borrowing. In
Right, because that's-
2026, it's like 4 times the amount from 2020. So
I think
what are
it's
you
all
planning on?
cumulative, isn't it?
This is cumulative, it's not, I'm not borrowing 1.7 million, I'm paying interest and principal on the accumulation of, by then, 3 borrow cycles.
Well, I apologize then, because you said earlier that the green was future borrowing.
Yeah, 1.257. in
Future after
2023.
today.
Future of today, okay.
It's not
Yeah.
future from the one that
Okay.
precedes it.
Right.
I think that the blue and the red's existing, the green is principal and interest for new. It's not broken out separately, is that correct?
Right,
And it just keeps on adding up, it's not like
so in a couple,
borrowing $500,000 this year and 1.5 or 2 later.
right,
The previous one adds to the previous one.
couple more cycles off the page, you would be all green, around $4 million. So we've heard in the past, you know, how about getting back to like a pay-as-you-go model with major road construction projects? What would that look like? Especially talking about interest alone of about $1 million a year. How the total debt has gone up from about 2 million to 4 million. And given that we would stay committed to funding about 1.7 million bucks a year for roads, would the council be interested in trying to unwind, if you will, the recurring debt cycles we go through and try to revert back to some sort of pay-as-you-go model, not knowing today what interest rates are gonna be like, what road prices are gonna be like, et cetera? So,
Yes,
so I thought I would
I would.
play with that a little bit. So the next slide, you remember the previous one with the 3 colors? Now we've got a 4th color where, starting in 2019, we start borrowing less over longer periods of time and start replacing some of that money with self-funded money,
which is the purple.
which is the purple amount. So
How do you do that?
we would borrow less, so the principal and interest would start going down, but we would make up that gap by putting the levy money.
Right, but what does this get you to the same combined expenditure on an annual basis? It can't, can it?
Pretty close.
It would,
4 million.
you would, that red bar would start shrinking, the green one is obviously smaller than what you saw on 2 slides ago. And then over time, depending on how much you wanted to fund for roads, whether it's 1.7 or 2 million or 1.5,
Well, no, but that's the question.
you could do that.
Can you actually do those funding levels, keeping that expenditure relatively constant? And keep the actual annual funding of roads relatively constant?
Well, wouldn't it be a fair statement to say that you're assuming that interest rates are gonna go up, so our borrowing is gonna go down as a result, but that our investment income is gonna increase, so that we'd be able to self-fund through our investment income?
Well, actually, we'd be arbitraging the opportunity, so we'd be spending less on interest, but we'd also rededicate the money, the savings, into a levy. So it would take, there might be a couple of years where we wouldn't be able to fund 1.7 because we borrowed less, but we don't want to levy too much to make up the gap.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. What could you expend in the period while you shifted from?
So we
From
work with Ellers to try
debt
to
to
come up with a
self-fund.
real model, but I'm just showing you an illustration of what that would look like. These green blocks for new debt would start getting reduced, and then we would drive the decision on how much we want to self-fund. Because obviously intuitively, you should understand that if we spend less on interest, that's gonna free up money to do something else, whether it's for roads or cap projects or anything you wanna do, or not do.
Yeah, except that typically you have to, I mean, you're not going to save enough on your interest reduction to make up for the borrowing that you would have done in that year. But at least I'd love to see the numbers. Maybe you can, but that would be hard to imagine.
I think you're
And
talking.
so you'd have to have some years of pretty lean road programs if you're going to keep the total expenditure the same and get out from the cycle that the city's currently in.
Yeah, 1/10 of debt spent in 1 year isn't gonna be a
Yeah. But remember, we're at $1 million a year now of interest payments, and over 10 years, that's $10 million of tax money that's going to pay interest.
I know, I'm just saying, how do you do it?
Do we
That's not all
want to
roads.
look at
That's not all
maybe
roads.
alternative ways of reallocating that resource, or
Yes.
those resources?
Yes, we
What's it?
we have to start pulling that back.
I think for things that recur periodically like roads, it's smart to take a look at it. Even if you can just start chipping away at it. I don't think, you're not gonna flip the switch off and stop borrowing overnight, but maybe you will, maybe you can unwind it over the next decade. It's taken a decade to.
And that being said, there's still a place for
Set in a
borrowing.
cycle.
If you look at the Public Works facility, if you look at some of your longer-lived assets, your sewers, things that are going to last 40, 50, 60, maybe 80 years, that's a perfect item or a perfect capital asset to borrow money for. But roads require constant maintenance, and we may not want to assume that substantial interest burden where we're constantly maintaining our roads and upgrading.
So knowing that our goal is to maintain taxes at a consistent rate, if at all possible, what are our opportunities? Has anybody come forward from staff to identify some opportunities to start shifting the borrow into a pay-as-you-go? What does that model look like as we say, yeah, of course we want to dive in and not pay this interest, but we also want to maintain it as level of a tax levy as we possibly can? What are our opportunities to explore as a council to give you guidance?
Well, I think the reason we're bringing this forward, and I'll step on Tom's toes for a second, we're in the second year of a 3-year issue. So
Yeah.
we're already committed for this year and into next year. So relative to our development of the 2017 budget, it's sort of spoken for. But now is probably the point in time where we want to be having that discussion. And Tom's graph here is a quick and dirty analysis. And I think we'd probably want to bring in the experts, Ellers or someone else, to kind of give us a really robust model at what that would look like and develop that, and then bring that back to you with some options and some decision points.
So Ellers is the financial side of it. I guess I'd look for, our major expense with interest that we're struggling with is roads. Is there an opportunity within our roads? Can we put a better surface down that lasts longer, that requires less maintenance? Can we do anything different to create some of that opportunity? Knowing that we've borrowed a little bit more as a council recently due to the fact that we can get ahead on a couple of these projects. Are we getting ahead? Can we save in years future? Is there anything, while interest rates are so low, that we can maybe borrow now to save significantly down the road and have that allocated savings into pay-as-you-go without impacting the taxpayer? Those are kind of, the answer is probably we're going to struggle with it, but knowing where that opportunity is and, where we can make some effective decisions on behalf of our constituency would be really helpful on this.
Well, at the end of this presentation, we're going to have a little survey, if you will, a straw poll, where we can get a sense of the council on. I think some of you would probably be interested in a pay-as-you-go, and some would think that it's okay to borrow at today's rates, assuming that they hold, that you're trying to match a long-term asset with a long-term debt, and you're okay with that. So we'll try to get some feedback on where the council's at with that, and then staff will come back appropriately.
What's the split between maintenance and repave?
Kristen? split.
It varies from one year to the,
Huh?
next, depending on the overall road condition, but we generally spend upwards of, $1 million to $1.2 million generally on just reconstruction and not maintenance.
And so maybe $500,000 on maintenance is how do you call that, a pay-as-you-go expense,
But
rebuild,
typically in any
maybe a
given year
capital.
of 210 miles of road, we crack seal 110 to 110 miles.
So
That's
back
a-
to my question, knowing that the burden of interest payments and borrowing is on roads, how are we going to analyze what we can do to try to get ahead on the road portion of it? The Ellers portion of the finance, absolutely. That's kind of a no-brainer. We do that on a consistent basis. How are we going to analyze those roads? What tools can we put in place? What can we offer to Kristen to see if we can figure out where the savings are? On maybe investing more now to save later or hold off for a year? I mean, how do we evaluate that process? The finance can give us the dollar spend terms and how to best manage our money, but we need feedback on how to best manage our roads. What tools are we putting into place? I guess,
That's a good question.
Well, and we typically
that we don't know.
do the analysis for the borrowing, is we bring forward the funding at various different levels and show you, the consequences of the reduced funding. I mean, there's no question you can fund roads at any level that, you choose. The 1.7 million is what allows you to maintain the current condition of the roads. So funding it at less than 1.7 will inherently have the roads deteriorate. So at some point, it's your acceptance level as to what the acceptable level of service is on your roads. And if it's less than, what it is now, then you can certainly spend less than you do now on roads.
I understand that you're backing us into the, if you want to spend less, they're going to deteriorate concept. I want to know how to analyze, are we really putting our best foot forward? Are there other options within that budgeted dollar amount? Are there other options that are out there? If there's a consulting firm that we can bring on to work with you that would benefit your knowledge, or if you feel that you're up to speed and can update us on that, you know, we're not going to be, the only way we're going to pay as we go is to pull money from the budget somewhere else and stick it towards pay as you go or raise taxes currently. So we have to find some savings somewhere. So I'm putting the burden on staff to try to work through and say, where can we find that savings to create a situation where we can support a pay as you go and avoid this debt service moving forward. $1 million a year is a high amount, but as, you know, Alderman Giro has brought up multiple times, you know, money's at an all-time low. Borrowing now is appropriate. Borrowing 10 years from now, 2026, we don't know where interest rates are going to be. If it's at 8-9%, well, that dollar amount just skyrocketed for future, and we haven't planned ahead. So how do we get out of this hole financially, from a finance standpoint and, you know, a backbone standpoint from your roads, without cutting staff or cutting programs or cutting something within the city?
And maybe looking at raising taxes. I'm sorry, folks, but, you know, this council has done an extraordinary job, I think, of maintaining the same tax rate, or virtually same tax rate, for 7 years. And that's quite a lot to be proud of. But at the same time, we've had to borrow more money to do the things that we used to pay as we go kind of scenario. To continue always having a goal of saying no tax rate increase is insane. There isn't anything else that any of us have had to pay in terms of utilities, buying a cup of coffee, anything in the last 7 years that hasn't gone up in price. I'm not suggesting that we have a huge increase, but to suggest that we always have to put the burden of finding savings on the backs of 22 staff people, virtually 22 staff people, is nuts, is just nuts, in my view. you look at the number of public safety employees that we have now, it hasn't changed very much in years. And I think it hasn't changed, or it is about the same level as it was 20 years ago. And the city's grown, and the expectations of our citizens has grown. Drug traffic has grown, and we don't increase our public safety. In public works, we have many more road miles to take care of. That means clearing them as well as maintaining them. And we have not grown in the Public Works Department. We have parks that everybody now wants cut and maintained where 25 years or more ago, even before Rotary Park was installed, we didn't really have maintenance parks. They were passive recreation. People walked in them, but we didn't have to cut grass everywhere. Now the citizens expect everything to look like a perfect garden, and we don't provide a staffing pattern that allows for that. We keep saying to our staff, our limited staff, that they must do more with less, find savings, keep the tax rate steady so that the people will be happy. I suspect that while there are people out there who will say they don't want any increase in taxes, I think you will equally find a fair number of people in this community who are willing to have their taxes go up. When they look at their roads and they know that we are indebting this city to maintain them, roads that they want maintained. You know, to think that we can keep going with no tax rate increase is not sustainable. It is simply not sustainable.
But where we've added value to our community with the development should be offsetting these expenses.
It does to some extent.
To some extent.
But not
It does,
fully.
but expenditures rise at a rate faster than new development. That's
Right.
pretty clear the last
That's right.
many years.
My statement wasn't to
There's been
burden
no
staff. My
development.
statement
Well, that's the problem.
was simply to analyze the process in which we can get from point A to point B. If we're just simply looking at the finances and which puzzle we're going to do from a financial side on the borrow, how to figure out the money to become self-funded, which is my long-term goal on the roads.
Isn't that the purpose of being here tonight? I mean, aren't we on a tangent, and isn't that what the Public Welfare Works Committee is supposed to be doing, is addressing the issues you keep raising?
That's a
Tonight is
committee issue.
financial-
This is
Tonight is a financial analysis meeting.
But part of the financial analysis comes into the roads, and to have one committee just come to the table with that one piece. You know, we're looking for a bigger picture on really what can we do as a group to try to find those savings in the roads long-term.
Back when we started this thing on with the roads years back, we knew we were gonna be putting in X amount of dollars. We knew that we were gonna be putting in a larger amount of dollars we had in the past to catch up on the roads. And at that same time, and if I remember correctly, we had talked about, you know, a 6 to 7 rating on our roads would be very acceptable for what, now that was at that time, for Common Council at the time, and a 6 to 7 rating would be very acceptable for us because we're bringing it up from what it was at. And in 2008, those ratings were a lot lower than that on those. But anyway.
Well, he has it up there, but I think when we started that, the conversation was
But what
right
I'm
after
saying
we,
is
right
that-
after we didn't fund, there was almost nothing funded for roads in like 2003.
Yeah.
It was down to like 300 grand, and there was a push to say this is, we were handling this in an unacceptable fashion.
But what I'm
We
saying
needed
now
to
is
get up, but I think we were right. We wanted to get it to 6.
Yeah. We
It
wanted to
wasn't
get to
the
6.
goal to get it to 7 or 8. It was to get it to 6 and keep it at 6. And in 4 years ago, we borrowed a bunch of money to make sure we could get to 6 and keep it there.
So what is our dollar amount now that we
Yeah.
need to have to keep it at that,
Right.
at that rating, not at keeping increasing the rating higher? I mean, unless the common council, because the number of people weren't here on it at that time when we initiated that. But that was our goal. I mean, to get between 6 and 7, minimum to get it above 6, and we're at that goal. Now, what does it take for us to maintain that, not for us to increase getting that up to 7 and then to 8 and that? Because in the initial analysis, when we first looked at that, we virtually could never get to that 8, 9 rating on it. It's just impossible
Well,
to
that's
do that.
expensive, too.
So, what does it cost us to maintain that at that 6th level? I mean, I think that's, everybody in everybody's district has some roads that need to be done, that are not in good shape, and they're all that need to be done. But what does it take us to maintain that at a 6th level? And I think we don't have to fund the roads at as high as level as we've been doing to do that, because we've been catching up all these years.
Well, I think that would factor into the analysis if we were to move forward on examining this.
Well, Dale raised the point that the roads that are ranked at 3 or less, we've always determined that those have to be taken care of, and that's, huh?
They're not on an annual basis. We have roads continually at 3 that don't get attention.
And we still meet these goals of,
And this is why staff in general has preferred not using the average SCR and instead to look at the distribution of roads. Because inherently, if you only address your 3s, then you move everything to a 10, and your 10 gets really tall, but in 5 years, all your 10s are gonna be 8s, and in another 10 years, they're all gonna be 5s, and then they're all gonna be 3s again, and you're gonna be in the same exact scenario where you have to fund a large amount of money to bring them all back up to a 10.
so then we need new
So the idea
grants.
was that if we would be able to provide you with a consistent funding amount, then you would be able to maintain the roads at a consistent level, being able to address those peaks and valleys in the road system without having to have peaks and valleys in the budget.
I think we went through this a couple of times in my time here, and the answer has always been 1.7 million,
Yep,
if I'm not mistaken, just to maintain where we're at.
to maintain. Yep.
Yeah.
Not even to do,
Not that, we're not
Everything
not
that we
striving
need
to
to be
go
doing.
anymore, just to maintain where we're at.
All right, we're gonna keep moving here.
So we're gonna switch the conversation to facilities now. And as we know about the new DPW facility coming online later this year, our overall footprint is shrinking. We're gonna abandon some buildings. We're gonna move into a new remodeled building. But we do still have some issues with our other buildings around the city of Mequon campus. And a lot of those relate to deferred maintenance. Now, I'm not sure if any of you saw the article a couple weeks ago in the Journal Sentinel about UW-Madison and
Yes.
same kinds of issues. This is great. Same kinds of issues that we're having.
with deteriorating facilities, you're saying,
Right.
Deferred maintenance.
concrete that's dropping away.
Yep. Try one more time.
Will, could you turn the fans and air conditioning off? It's cold in here.
So there's a good article about that, the same thing, things that City of Mequon has faced, obviously on a much larger scale about infrastructure. So if you haven't read it, I'd encourage you to take a look at it.
No, I didn't see
Okay, so
anything
as
on
part of that, we wanted to kind of show you guys a couple of photographs of some of the deferred maintenance that we have in the city that you might not otherwise see on a day-to-day. So we kind of broke this down by areas. These are all pictures of City Hall, and this part's going to be a little interactive, so I have some questions for you guys, and hopefully some of you guys will know the answers. So we're going to start kind of in the upper right-hand corner. That is a picture of the roof degradation on City Hall. The next photograph, as you can see, there's kind of like a makeshift stand. That is because that area floods, and that system has been flooded before. Then in the top right, those are HVAC controls. Does anyone want to guess what year those HVAC controls are from?
1972.
77? Anyone else?
72.
72? 1970s, so.
Yeah.
That's what the candy was for, I'm gonna guess next time. The mayor gets one.
All right. So
Just
then
because
we
he's
have
mayor?
Yeah.
The AC units for the council chambers, the generator at City Hall, some City Hall windows, and the City Hall parking lot. All right, this is the public safety building. Top right is the bunks at Station 1. Anyone want to guess what year those bunks are from?
83.
Top left, you mean?
1980.
Yep, well, yeah.
Or you said right, and I was looking like,
Left, yep.
sleep on the
83.
bed.
Anyone else?
80.
80? 1986.
The mattress? Thank you.
You have the makeshift closet slash now computer room in the police department, where there's not sufficient air conditioning to maintain the systems. You have some systems down here, the air handlers that are original to the building. You have the garage doors and the brickwork as well as the parking lot at the East Side Fire Station. And the retaining wall cracks at Station 1 and the police department.
No.
Okay, so this is the swimming pool. So the first picture, top left, you have the pool deck cracks. You have the filler house wall that you guys can see is cracking. You have some bathhouse floor cracks. Then you have the filter for the pool. Does anyone want to guess what year that filter is?
Well, they redid the pool
75.
and
75?
I'm gonna guess 1979.
79?
They fixed that one.
68? Anyone else?
No, it's not that old
Nope,
because,
it's not that old.
no,
No,
It's
it's redone.
1985.
yeah, I
Yep.
was gonna say 85.
So,
Nobody gets candy,
nobody
we're too
gets
far
candy.
out.
Then you guys have the bathhouse urinals and the wall. You can see there's like a huge hole in the wall. And then we have the bathhouse walls. So I know we kind of brought up parks and forestry, and we actually maintain 1,181.7 acres of parkland, and that's around 26 parks. I know there's a few that we're still trying to determine whether or not they're going to be parks, but 26 for now. And kind of talking to our parks director, these are some of the projects that were outlined as either deferred maintenance or items that have been brought forward as things we want, amenities that we haven't had the ability to fund. So the paving, obviously, both at Rotary and Catherine Kearney Park, is deferred maintenance. The pool, bath, filler house replacement. Obviously, we have an aging pool. A really great example of this is the new Super Pass. How many of you guys are aware of that?
We're all aware.
All right, great. So we make out really well on the front end. People want to buy that Super Pass, but we make out terribly on the back end because I think our residents are going to Cedarburg, and they're going to Port Washington, and they're going to Grafton pools. So we made a lot of cash on the front end. We didn't see as much on the back end when it came to attendance levels.
I thought we just had a record June.
Yeah, but we split,
Not a record June,
No?
more than last year.
yeah, we split between the neighboring communities based on how many people from the other communities come to our pool, and we don't have any.
That was down last year significantly.
But is that bad?
I'm
Yeah,
just
I
pointing
just-
out the facts. It's up to you to decide what
Not if it's
that
gonna
is.
take.
Same with
Yep.
EIB, we have about 27,000 ash trees. That's an estimate of how much it would cost to replace those. And then at Lemke Park, there's porta potties. I guess it has been brought up that people would like bathrooms. That's a cost on that. And at River Barn Park, where we don't have air conditioning, that's an approximate cost on that. Okay, we also have aging fleet and equipment. In Public Works, here's a quick sampling of some pieces of equipment that we have there. that are aged out and have not been replaced. At public safety, same thing here. Equipment in the processing room for the police department and the training room that's shared between the police and fire departments. The living areas at Station 1 and Station 2, some of which you guys have seen pictures of already. The speed trailer at the police department, a truck at the fire department, and EADs for the PD. These are just a sampling of some of the projects that we have and some of the aging equipment that we haven't been really able to fund and replace.
Can I just follow up? The Public Works, we have that 5-year plan, and we,
It's been funded at half its.
Yeah, so we're gonna show you some numbers in relation to that in just a second.
well, it was not brought up with this urgency at committee, I don't think. Okay.
Okay, so here are the pictures of those
Yeah,
four
exactly.
pieces of equipment that were on that previous slide. Would anyone like to guess the age of the sweeper that we have in this bottom here, the Elgin Pelican?
Yeah. You know,
I'm not gonna guess.
87? Anyone else?
I don't know. I'm looking to breeze through some of this. We know we have some old equipment. I think we need to analyze in committee what the needs are. And I'm getting some feedback, just kind of, the committee members weren't aware of the urgency of several of these items in committee to propose things to council. This is a budget overview. I agree with bringing it up tonight. I don't believe that this is going to be a major chunk of our focus is on the age of the equipment. I'd like to see some of these things brought to committee. I'd like to see some of those things go through appropriate areas
I think we
prior to
should see
getting
this
to budget.
stuff, because this stuff, it isn't that this doesn't, that committees don't
I
take a
asked
look
to
at
have a
these
sweeper
things.
brought out, I think a year or so ago, and I wasn't aware that we had a sweeper.
Well,
Because I had some gravel on corners and motorcyclists were concerned about going down on their bikes. And now I see that we got a sweeper, and half of my thing is, why wasn't that sent out?
What if we just get through the presentation? We're gonna spend too much time
yeah,
talking.
Right.
let's see
Go
what
to the
we
next
have.
slide.
We need to know
I agree with
what
that.
the study looks like.
Hopefully this answers some of your questions, Pam. We
Right.
have 17 total plow trucks. Every year, the Public Works Department tries to replace one of those trucks because it gets aged out. It's $165,000. The lease payments that we have in the Public Works Department are about $70,000, which brings our grand total to $235,000. Last year, they received $260,000 towards their equipment replacement, which after the plow truck and lease payments left them with $25,000 to go towards something else. And here are the years of that equipment that we showed you and the relative dollar amount of what it would cost to replace those pieces. For example, the Mack plow truck is the only 4x4 plow that we have in the whole city. So some of these pieces are important.
Why do we need that?
And we need that for heavy snowstorms. It's the only thing that can really get through the snow. Here's some more pictures for you. The speed trailer at the police department. Anyone want to take a guess where that was purchased from?
they built it, didn't they?
That's correct, Menards. That was a trick question. I'll let you guys take some more candy if anyone wants any. The stove original to the Firehouse Station 1, 1979. The AEDs at the police department, about 15 years old. This truck in the fire department is in 1988. This is the fuming chamber that's used to process fingerprints at the police department, and a picture of the training facilities at the police department. So we kind of showed you a picture of some of the aging equipment, some of the deferred maintenance. So last year, the department heads had requested about $2.1 million in capital projects to address some of these needs. The total funding that was approved as part of the 2016 budget was $743,000. We just started the process on the 2017 capital improvement plan, and the total number of projects this year has come in at about 2.3 million. So obviously the question mark of where are we gonna go with funding some of this stuff?
So that dovetails with the idea of having an asset management plan. We've got a 5-year capital improvement plan, but we really don't have a plan that shows how to finance something over a long period of time besides either tax levy or taking on more debt. So we're looking at maybe putting together a strategic plan that would talk about not only what the assets we should be buying, but how we're going to finance that going forward. And we'd be looking at things like facilities, infrastructure, heavy equipment, and things like that.
And to your point, Alderman Strelchek, not only would an asset management plan or an exercise in developing an asset management plan look at how much we need to cover the assets currently under our management or our administration, but I think it's going to go to look at how, are we doing things the right way? Are we taking the right approach to maintaining our fleet? Is our fleet the right size that it needs to be? Are there other options like leasing that we've pursued over the years that are more cost-effective to manage our overall capital costs and our capital spend? So we think an asset management plan across all of these various disciplines listed on this chart would give us the methodology, the approach, and the analysis to kind of come back with some numbers and some data that would put the council in a better position to make funding decisions across these areas. And it's as Tom mentioned, facilities, it's our roads and bridges, it's our fleet, it's all of our equipment that we're not even talking about here today, the office equipment, public safety equipment, field equipment, and other opportunities like parks, wayfinding. There's been talk about signage and improving that, and beautification. Other opportunities that we're not even necessarily managing right now, but that may become apparent down the road. So we kind of want to get our arms around that and find out what that cost is and whether we're pursuing the best available practices and the best available methodologies.
At no point was I stating that we had, I mean, I was aware we had old equipment. I saw several of those pieces, and I've been aware of that for a while, and it is a problem that does need to be fixed. I agree with your statement on that.
But that term capital, it covers so many different
Right.
aspects of what we do. We've got to get our arms around that, because capital to you is different than capital to you, and you think of different things when you mention capital. Now I think we're going to kind of shift our focus to planning for 2017. Tom's going to walk us through a couple of slides that we'd like to share some information with you as we look at next year.
Right, so it's July, but we're already looking at things that are going to be an impact on the 2017 budget. So as Will mentioned earlier, we had some mid-year hires in 2016 that we will be looking to fully fund for 2017, and the incremental cost of going full year for these new employees is going to be about $64,000. We got a notification from Wisconsin Retirement System that the employer share of the contribution rates are going up 0.4% for general employees and 1.85% for protective employees.
And the mid-year hires, besides the inspection supervisor, which you're in the process of hiring, what other mid-year hires has the city had?
We had the records and communications supervisor position in the police department, which was filled back in April, May?
Yes. All right, just wondering.
So we won't know for a couple of months where health insurance premiums are going to be with employee trust funds. The assessor contract is coming up for renewal. We're now going to be working with the Mequon Police Association on the next 2 or 3 year contract. The Affordable Care Act is an issue with our paid-on-call firefighters going forward. We're looking at the idea of utility / fixed asset accountant to be financed primarily with utility funds. And it remains to be determined how much savings or net costs we're going to have with the facilities consolidation until we get some more experience. So when we get into budget, we usually talk about fund balance and what's an appropriate amount. And as many of you know, just some history, back in '09, we had a negative outlook from Moody's when we hit a low of 6% of next year's expenditures. Moody's, every time we have a conversation with Moody's, we do have an issue to talk about with, our fund balance ratio is below that of our similarly rated peers. The city does have a fund balance policy of at least 10%, up to 15%. And at the end of 2015, our fund balance percentage was 15.6%. I say this a lot, but GFOA recommends 2 to 3 months worth of fund balance, which is the equivalent of 16 to 25%. And we want to raise the issue again about sustainability, that using fund balance to plug the gap of ongoing operations is not a sustainable way for the city to work its monies. If you remember back a few slides ago, the expense for the new debt coming online next year for the Public Works facility is about $660,000. That would, if we wanted to keep the tax rate the same and not increase taxes and absorb that with fund balance, that would be a pretty good hit to the fund balance amount. And we would see that something that is a one-time fix that could not be repeated the following year. So, tax rates, often the discussion gets to what should the final tax rate be, what does that look like? To keep that tax rate the same of about $3.06 per thousand for the city share, in spite of the new debt coming online, we'd have to do reductions of about $650,000 of either operating or service expense reductions. Reminder that the capital budget that we actually funded last year was $743,000. I think this is your next point here.
Yeah, and I know that last year, in order to maintain the tax rate and to balance the budget, the amount of capital that was recommended by staff was $833,000. That was reduced by the council to $743,000. If you look at that number, $650,000, you could certainly take the capital spending off the table and plug that gap, but that's not going to leave any money for us to replace fleet or equipment or do drainage projects or fund other capital needs like emerald ash borer removal. So, you know, the level that we're funding capital at right now really doesn't rise to the point where it could be considered to fill that $650,000 gap, because that would just take us down to nothing.
So to basically have a status quo budget, basically the same level of service that we have today in 2017 would require a 15-cent increase in the tax rate just to cover the new debt service that's coming online. That's what this bullet point is about. If we were to do instead of 15 cents to go to like a 25-cent rate increase, that would give us about a $400,000 extra each year to address these capital projects and other items that we've talked about tonight. So what would those different rates mean on an average house in the city of Mequon? So I've came up with 3 scenarios. What does 1 penny or 1 cent increase look like for that homeowner? A 15-cent increase, that's basically for the new debt, or the 25-cent increase for that extra $400,000 per year. So for a $400,000 house, that's about $100 increase in city of Mequon taxes for 2017. So to recap, new debt service is not subject to Wisconsin state levy limits. There's a carve-out provision for new debt issued after 2005 is not subject to the state levy limit. I know we've talked in previous budget cycles about the mill rate and what that's going to look like. Again, $687,000 on the new debt is about 15 cents. And so this is where we get to the interactive part. So does everybody have their smartphones ready to go?
Ready to go?
Yeah, we're going to do a little online survey here. Can you
I don't do
pull your-
smartphones, sorry,
Do you want to borrow mine?
no. I don't use them, Will, so.
Okay.
might have warned us.
All right, so what are we doing here?
We did, I thought it was in the packet.
Where are we going to?
So,
Should you get out your
where's that handout?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Is there any,
So are we going to that website? Get,
yeah, we're gonna
Yeah,
go,
no, just, it's kahoot.it,
IT.
your web browser.
kahoot.it.
Like a hatchet job, like a set by Jones.
right, so it should get, it look like this, a little color display.
And my first typo. Bid Kahoot.
What's this a question?
So I misspelled it, I did O-U-T.
Wait for game pen, okay.
Do I have to be on the City of Mequon Wi-Fi network, or can I be?
Give me
You got unlimited data,
gonna
keep
make
going.
you do this, aren't you?
We'll get a pin, we'll get a pin number.
Well, okay, I have something that says game pen.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mine looks
so
different.
when you get to the, when you get to the screen.
Hit
that
on
says-
me.
Keep changing color.
You're using a smartphone, baby.
What pin?
No, I was turning the city's Wi-Fi on.
They have to lead this down this.
Right, I wanna be on Wi-Fi.
Dale's got
Okay.
it. Put the name,
Enter
number,
where?
Mark, you wanna play?
Click on the
Click on
button.
game pin.
Doesn't seem like a game.
I don't have a game pin.
Hey, I found Pokemon. That's the pin that you need to enter, right there.
And why is it asking me for a nickname?
IT?
so it can put your name up on
You can
the
put your
board.
name, you can put up any fake name if you want. If you wanna do Riot Chew, you can put that in there.
Watson.
Alright, Dale's in.
What'd you use for a
Why does
name?
it say there's a problem
My name?
if you want it to be anonymous?
What is it, 76?
Yeah.
Yeah, then I'm the only one that's like anonymous. I got some weird name.
What's the game pin?
Up there.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right on the screen.
So then what do you
I
want?
pushed it down on my
I don't think you
phone.
need the
I was
glasses for that,
putting
it's
Rob,
about
I
a
don't
foot
know.
either.
For money.
I'm in.
Where's the money?
Ebenezer's.
Except it's misspelled.
Okay,
Yeah, hit enter. It says
so now what?
exclamation point. Problem.
Whoa.
So now what?
Except I missed the E. I don't
Who's
have.
gonna answer?
I mean, if we're
Grok.
So now what do you do? What did you get here?
No, I'll be good.
What did you have to get here?
Ebenezer, who's Ebenezer?
Except
Probably,
I.
it's probably
Except I dropped my
You
E.
should have been Doc Brown, but
You didn't realize it'd take half these people about a half an hour to log
I
in.
have unique
So now
security
what?
Hey, now what do we do?
This is,
We all have to get up.
How much money are we gonna
I'm
spend?
gonna run out of battery we really get access.
You didn't realize it would take these people about a half an hour to log in, did you?
We're just waiting on Andy.
Dale, you win your first race in
Everybody's in. Okay.
All right, you ready? So first question,
Finance strategy.
Oh, wow. Do you get points for asking quick or no?
Greatest green
no.
Don Makowski.
so you just hit the color of the name that you like.
Just in general or based on stats?
Now, why do I have a black screen?
This is your opinion.
Come on, get this one quickly. This is,
A minute to answer this?
I have to think.
We've got 6 answers, we're waiting on 3.
Okay, so
Timer's counting down. Pick 7 answers.
it doesn't really matter, Pam, just put it in.
I like 5 seconds one.
You know what you wanna put in? Right in J
Gar,
color.
Gar, because he got the whole thing going. He got everything.
Got a whole minute to do this?
Yeah, 'cause I
It's just a quarter.
Okay.
I handicapped
Green Bay
it.
receivers.
Who isn't in yet?
and why?
Will, you got the one of them that says, who cares, I'm a Bears fan?
You got that covered?
Looking to us to use this.
You got all the answers, let's go.
Yeah, exactly.
We didn't vote.
Someone didn't
I
vote.
don't get something, I didn't get anything on it.
There we go.
9 answers.
All right, so in this case, 5 people think Brett Favre is the best quarterback. 4.
No one picked Aaron Rodgers. That's kind of funny.
Statistically, he's probably better.
All right.
Favre would have been third on my list.
You guys get out of play now. You ready?
Sure.
I picked stuff.
There you go. Question two.
I don't have enough information.
Brett Favre.
I
Jeez.
don't have enough information, so I'm not answering.
I
Not
can't answer
answering
either.
Yeah.
No answer.
Partially.
Oh, just hit that.
Oh, jeez.
I'm answering it, I don't care. It's interest, it's not fact-based.
Binding.
But I don't know how to answer any of these questions, so I'm not. Somehow,
you have an opinion
somehow
on
when we've had,
football.
no,
Well,
some-
yeah, opinion, yeah.
somehow when we've had straw polls before, they always come back to be kind of a consensus.
We went candy?
I'm not enjoying
Some
a
more
consensus.
candy?
Okay,
Okay.
okay.
Maybe we should debate
No, no, no.
the
I'm
facts
kidding.
before you answer the questions.
I don't think the mayor's getting the
I thought you could win it by playing candy.
All right, we've got 7 answers, and the buzzer sounds.
Kind of like that.
So we have some interest in taking a look at this.
Not this year.
In the next 5 years.
I'm
We have
interested
to
in
look
looking
at it this year to have it happen in 1 to 3 or 5
Okay,
plus.
is there consensus on bringing back some more information to the council regarding borrowing versus pay-go?
Sure.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, of course.
All right,
But
It'd be irresponsible not to.
please have it be borrowing for roads as opposed to having overall borrowing, some of which has nothing to do with the road program in the analysis.
sure, understood. Yeah, our current debt profile, understood. Okay, question 3 of 5.
Like Hubert.
Got 9 answers. Okay,
Well, that's about as vanilla as it gets.
I don't know what that tells you.
All right, well,
3 plus 1 plus 1 plus 4 equals 9.
all right, thank you.
That's why you're in charge, Dan.
Next question?
What? There's,
Zero.
yeah.
None of the above.
None of the
Yeah,
above.
borrow-
Yeah,
none
where
of
is
the
the none
above.
of the
This you
above?
Didn't even look at expenses yet.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so that means no answer.
Yeah.
recognizing that we have the DPW debt service coming on at about 650,000 going into 2017. So that's a number we're gonna have to wrestle with.
At least 15 cents per thousand.
What debt is falling
So,
off?
Sometimes there's.
This is all net, so,
All math.
net.
Net,
Oh.
net, 15 seconds.
you all are thinking that people in this community, some may have a struggle, and I understand that, but the vast majority of people in this community could certainly afford another $100 a year to do what the city needs to do.
Please, we're trying to do our own
Submit their
survey.
names.
We're doing our own survey here. Please let us, hold your comments till the end.
5 non-votes for
I'm willing to pay an extra $100 a year, I'm just not willing to impose it upon other people.
Okay, should we go to the last question?
Last question.
Last question, this is getting to be hard.
Make a donation.
Here's zero.
$0.15 gets gets us to a status quo budget from an operations standpoint and a staffing standpoint. 15 cents addresses the ongoing debt the new debt service.
3 people answered.
Okay. So we've played our game.
Did I win?
Huh?
Did I win?
No, we've gotten some feedback.
Just have another candy bar.
We can get to playing ghost mode.
Okay, we are coming to the end of staff's
No, I said he can have another, I didn't have any.
staff's presentation of information. The next steps as outlined in the memo that went out to you last week. We're going to be putting out budget instructions to the departments here this week as they begin preparing their draft budgets and their budget requests for 2017. Those are going to be due by mid-August into my office and the finance department. Budget reviews will be completed by the end of August, and then the finance department really goes to work and puts it all together, and we'll have a draft budget out by the beginning of October. One question we have for all of you, we spend about $1,000, $1,200 putting together those nice appropriations committee binders that get used for all of about one night a year. Would you be interested in a paperless budget?
I'm fine with that.
And saving the $1,200 that we normally spend to send this out and have it professionally printed and have the binder indexed? It's a very nice package, but we're spending a lot of money for one night of work. Or
Could you
potentially-
compromise and still have like your budget comments, hard copy, and some of the major, revenue, the overall revenue and like the, that type of thing?
Budget summary?
Yeah,
Budget
wouldn't
summary
take,
would
it'd just be twice as thick
It
as
doesn't need to be
this.
bound, just
Yeah,
photocopy.
we'd of course like to go paperless and save the money. However, where I run into troubles is if I want to compare a couple different pages, a PDF doesn't really give you the opportunity to pull up multiple pages at once. You got it open and you're on a page.
Print it out.
Can we do just a cheap paper budget? It doesn't have to be with all colors and bound and everything else. I like to have something I can write notes on.
Sure.
That I can follow through on.
Cheap paper budget?
You can ask Claire.
Yeah. Okay,
I think the budget is amongst the most important things we do, so
okay. We'll make sure you have a hard copy, and it may not be as pretty as past versions that have come to the appropriations committee. Save
I'd
a
rather
little
have
money.
one that you can actually see well on a computer rather than a half-assed black and white one.
I agree.
That it's hard to follow. I mean, if you put charts and stuff, the colorization helps, but whatever. I'd rather-
We'll do our best to get something in your hands that you can read and understand and decide.
I'd rather have electronic.
I'm sorry?
I said I'd rather have the electronic version anyhow, so.
All right.
Well, you can provide that anyway, right?
I'm sorry?
You can provide the electronic version anyway, so if we brought a laptop, you can pull it up, but if you had a cheap paper
Well, we
copy.
just need to format it electronically, and that's a step we haven't followed in the past. But if that's the will of the council,
But how do you then print if you don't format it somehow?
we've actually been sending it out to a printer who then
Oh,
collates
okay.
the binder
Gotcha.
and
All right.
gives it back to us with all the tabs, and it just,
Wow.
Oh, you can do that in-house easily.
well,
It's usually,
No,
it's
I
usually
used to
cheaper
work
send-
for a person, I mean, it
Staff
can be
time.
done.
Yeah, it's usually
Staff
cheaper.
time.
Yeah, but we
Limited
find,
staff.
we
No,
find
it's-
if we have more than a few hundred pages, it's cheaper
If
to
they're
send
just
out.
making 9, it's easy to do in-house.
Sure,
Trust
but
me,
it takes
I,
time.
Page document.
Yeah, it's a
Yeah.
400-page document with tabs and
It's
and a
easy.
binder, but it takes a lot of time.
okay, we're gonna get you a paper
you know what you're doing.
copy budget. It's not gonna be the pretty binder that it has been in years past.
It'll be on
What about the appropriations committee meetings? Do we wanna set a meeting tonight? Would you rather have us poll you in September? I know everyone's got
Yeah.
busy
Got
calendars.
those 3 dates on my calendar.
Those are the 3 dates that we're looking at right now. My
How do you come up
guess-
with those? I mean, they're just, it seems like an odd
all of
grouping
them
of
or
dates.
one of?
Well, the budget gets posted October 5th, that first week of October. I think the 5th might be a Friday. And then we've got Planning Commission that next week. We've got Common Council that next week, which I think are the 10th and 11th. And that takes us to the 12th and the 13th. And then we have to have the meeting by October 19th because we have public notice posting requirements for a public hearing. and the budget needs to be adopted by November 9th, so we can get the tax bills out by December 1st, right, Tom?
Correct.
How did we used to, I mean, we had
Well, I
all
can
the
tell you
same,
it won't be here on Saturday.
all the same
because
constraints,
they're
but we
right
used to
Yeah,
do
it's
this
not gonna happen.
over a few week period of time, because we used to have 3 to 5 meetings scheduled to begin with. I think they all usually end up being 3 meetings, and they weren't all on the same week. How did we do with that? Anybody who was here remember? I mean, it just
We've
seems.
gotten it down to one meeting.
Well, I know, but when we used to have more meetings, it wasn't all bunched into 1 week like this. I'm just curious how that happened.
Well, you're right, because sometimes we see something and then staff has to go back and work at it, take some time, and then we'll have it the
Yeah,
next.
we used to have it over a 2 or 3 week period of time.
Yes,
I was just
we used to,
curious.
because we make
Started earlier.
adjustments and then
Okay.
it takes time.
Maybe that's it. If we're doing it 1 meeting, fine, but I'm just curious.
The other night that's available is Wednesday, October 12th, but then some of you run a plan commission Monday night, a council meeting Tuesday night, and an appropriations committee meeting Wednesday night.
I'd rather just take
For
up 1
park
week
board.
than spread things over 3.
Okay, so we're looking at the 12th, the 13th, I heard a no on the 15th, and possibly the 18th as a carryover date. Is there a desire for Wednesday or Thursday, that second week of October?
Okay.
Definitely not for me Thursday. That's why I was curious about the
Definitely not
dates. Thursday.
Okay.
October 13th?
Yeah, I just generally.
Want to decide now, or would you like us to send out a
We're
Email.
here, why don't we decide now?
So we do it on the 12th and then like the 18th?
How about the 12th and the 18th?
That sounds fine.
Show of hands?
You need
Because
both
you can make
nights?
it Tuesday night.
Well,
I
we'll have a
can't,
backup date,
12th
and if
is
we
a-
don't need the second date, we won't.
12th is a Wednesday, I can't make Wednesdays. I have no other managers at the place, just me, so. No Saturdays, no Wednesdays.
Tradition.
I could check to see if I can make Thursday. Maybe I can. We'll just do the Thursday and
The
I'll make it
13th
work.
and the 18th, the Thursday, would that work?
13th
Does
and
that work for you, Dale?
Yeah, it works.
Okay,
Maybe.
Unless we're shooting.
all right. We'll confirm those dates and get them out to the council and put them on the calendar, the meeting calendar here for the city. Get those on the website. Jumping back to the tax rate question for just a moment, the 15-cent tax rate question. We do need a little direction or consensus in terms of what you would like to see at appropriations. If the consensus of the room is a flat tax rate, that is going to mean service reductions and likely personnel reductions.
What I would like to see is my background in graduate school. I got my MBA in finance. We do these things all the time. Accounting does these all the time. This whole presentation was all on one side of the equation. There was nothing in here at all on any, even mention of where we can be more efficient. What things do we not need? Do we need all this stuff? What I would like to see coming back is something on the other side of the coin too. Where can we be more efficient? Connie says, oh, rates went up, everything costs more. No, oil and gas is down. I paid $4 a gallon, paid $1 or $2.15 the other day. Costs, inflation is not nearly as high as it used to be. Interest rates are extremely low. You're paying 2% on interest and you're running inflation at 2%. I'd like to see some of all these different things. Where can we possibly make some cost savings? What do we need all these things that we have? So, put some thought into that. I'd like to see something on, you look at revenues and expenses. We looked at how we can get more revenues, taxes. Let's look at our expenses. We didn't do this last year either. And I gotta vote for anything, any increase at all, unless I see some effort at looking at the expense side of the equation. And where can we be more efficient? And where might we be able to cost? And where might we be able to take a conservative approach instead of just, we haven't raised taxes in 7 years. It's time to do that. So I'd like to see that when we come back next time, not just another one of these games.
I'd like to.
Historically, we've always asked for, or recently, we've asked for a no tax rate budget. And I think people would like to see what that is.
What that looks like?
what that looks like, and of course, every year you come back with, well, that cuts this, and so you make that presentation, but at least from your perspective, what a no tax rate budget would entail. That
Yeah,
would be- I think that would be a starting point.
That's what I was gonna say. And then a list of, here are the things that we're not going to fund because you asked for a no tax rate budget, and here are the things that we'd like to fund if we could. And here's where we found some savings in the budget. You know, and then we make adjustments from there. I mean,
I think that if we are looking at any tax increases, that the public should see some visible results within their community. If we're gonna raise taxes, there should be some level of ideally service improvement, park improvement, you know, the fact that there's zero money in park improvements. You know, I hear people saying it's not necessary, but it's the one thing the public can actually go sit in and use versus 19 whatever Mack 4x4 plow truck.
Well, but you still have
That's
to
used in heavy
prioritize.
snow events. And, you know, if we're gonna entertain raising taxes, me personally, I think my constituency would like to see some level of usefulness come in their city, whether it be in parks or something that's gonna benefit the city. And then secondarily, as we're evaluating police and fire, he came forth and was kind of frustrated after last year's meeting, fire in specific. We're gonna need to increase the police force, as Alderman Pouquet has mentioned. It's been something we've needed for a few years. We're at the same level we were at, I believe, when I was in high school. You know, as we're looking at public safety being our prime feature, that's where we started our meeting tonight. Police and fire and the safety and an extra squad driving through subdivisions, or, you know, an extra, you know, shift on the street so that citizens can feel safer in their homes and in the community is gonna be something that's gonna be important moving forward. Fire, what we don't have is, as the revenues increase, so do the costs, but how are we adding personnel within that fire department to fill it in versus, you know, is it all paid on call for fire? That's something, you know, definitely within fire I'd like to see, as we have EMT services consistently going out and generating that revenue coming in. How is that getting allocated within that department? Or is it going over to the overall budget?
The other piece of that is, how do we treat our personnel? We now have our safety people staying overnight in our two stations so that they can be ready on the spot to go out in the middle of the night on emergencies, which happen quite frequently. And they are staying in horrible conditions, very frankly. You would not want your son or daughter, the people of this community would not want their sons or daughters staying in the dorms that have been created out of
It's makeshift.
nothing. It's very makeshift, and it's not safe. It's
What do you
not
mean it's
in
not
good
safe?
condition. You saw some of the pictures, of deteriorating resources around the city. And you're saying that if we're gonna have any kind of an increase, people need to have something to see that makes them feel better, that they can go to the park and they can enjoy it because it's a new thing. People of this community have to realize that we have an infrastructure of city assets as well, that we are responsible for maintaining, and we're not doing it well. And we're not doing it well because we have not taxed for it. And we haven't taxed for it because people have been following a mantra for years: no tax increase. Well, that is not sustainable. It's not sustainable in this budget. Our staff has told us that. 15 cents per thousand we're gonna have to come up with just to pay the the indebtedness, the debt service that we have created. And if we don't do more, we have to cut into services and staff that we already have.
Boy, Will, you asked a simple question, where to start, but, and I do agree with the first three people that spoke that I would like to see it without the 15% increase. One thing we haven't talked about is if we do feel we have to do a 15% increase. One thing that you had mentioned was, do we want to look at the reserve money, which is at 15.5%, and we have it slated right now to be 10 to 15%, and I didn't see where that was going to take us. I would like to see that too. But then you have people mentioning have a whole nother shift of police officers out there. That's a $300,000 expense, because you'd have to have 4 officers for that shift between weekends, at least, maybe 5, between weekends and time off, and as we know, it takes 3 officers to do a day, so if we had a whole nother route for the policemen, that could be $350. So I don't know how you're gonna put those add-ons if people wanna consider that, but maybe just keep those kind of things on a list, and you guys can keep calling him and telling him what else you want, and he comes up with prices, but we can pick like a grocery list if we go that way. I don't, at this point, intend to go that way, but you're hearing from a lot of sides. But I would start out with the basic one, and then, like Dan said, I would have 2 lists. One are things that you feel are essential to add on, and then another one would be what you're all hearing, perhaps. I'm just trying to help come to this with a way that we don't have to meet 4 times.
Just so we're clear, I think Tom pointed out earlier in the presentation that we do have fund balance above and beyond what our minimum target is of 10%. And that certainly would be or is on the table as we go into FY 2017, but recognize that's a one-time fix.
That was
So
clear.
If you use the fund balance for 2017, it's not available again in 2018 when you still need to plug that debt service gap. It's going to have to be some form of permanent reduction in our operating expenses to maintain that over the life of that bond issue.
Well, let me ask, some debt, when we take on debt, sometimes the payments the first year or 2 are bigger, and then it evens out. Can you remind me the way, the graph of the way this payment goes for the Public Works building?
I want to say it's pretty level.
Yeah, as part of the analysis and the approval process, the council voted on a level payment option to reduce the total interest costs over the life of the debt. So it's kind of like your mortgage. It's going to be the same amount every year over the life of the loan.
Okay, thank you.
Can you get out to us just our debt and when it expires, just a couple sheets, just not even as part of the budget packet, just as a, here's where the debt is, so we can at least just start seeing in one section where our debt is, where it expires, what it's allocated for from which fund. I think that'll help us communicate a little more effectively moving forward.
Okay, we can do that.
And I'm not saying that we're gonna get 3 officers next year, but on a 5-year plan, that's a realistic, or something similar to that is realistic. As you are recommending to council, a 5-year, like year 1, we'd recommend looking at this. If you wanted to do A, B, or C thing, year 2, 3, 4, and 5, just kind of looking to get a couple of these things cleaned up. The roof, the pool, we've talked about, we have to, that's a council review item we've talked about for 2 years now.
Just recognize if we're coming back to you with a no tax rate increase budget, that's gonna amount to certain operating cuts, of which is likely
Understandable.
going to be personnel. If the direction we're getting is to also come back with some proposals to add personnel, we're gonna have to cut even more personnel to add personnel.
Yeah.
Or cut other expenses to add those expenses in, so.
You have a wish list that's going to extend far beyond the tax increases that you've discussed today. Your job as staff, and my request of you guys as staff, is to come forward with what your wish list and how that would be planned out so that we could have a balanced tax rate. If we would entertain a tax increase, what that would include and what that picture would look like.
Sure.
So that the council can evaluate it.
Absolutely.
You've got some people that want to hold the baseline. You've got the debt services coming online at 15 cents. We should see kind of what that picture would look like, and then like start fixing and maintain and balance a couple of the heavy items that you've brought up tonight, what that would look like over the next 5 years. We can't evaluate that option at all if those tools with facts, figures, and numbers aren't in front of us. And unfortunately, getting that budget together on those 3 levels is going to be a little more of a hefty project. Come forward with what you feel is best. But
Would there be any interest on the part of the council to maybe get a preview of that, of what that would look like before going into appropriations and having an interim meeting in, say, September to understand what those,
I
Yes.
think we're going to have to, or we'll never get through it in October.
I think we're going to struggle this year.
Casual observation, it's coming out a little bit tonight. It came out in last year's process when we did the SWOT analysis. Went through that, and you hear all the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. SWOT, yeah.
I hate jargon.
Everyone, as we went through the departments, all the wish list things came out, and everyone was really vocal. And you get to the end of the year, there's no support for anything, so there seems to be a huge disconnect. You can't have another shift of police officers when you can, we're gonna have to raise the tax rate 15 cents 1,000 just to break even on the services we do now.
Right.
We are at a huge decision point here. There's a big discrepancy from our wish list to just maintaining.
Let's keep in mind
It's
that
incredible.
Wish list sounds like it's just something we'd like to have.
I don't even think they're wishes.
And my sense is the staff is asking us for things that they believe this community needs. It's not a wish list.
it's not a wish.
It's-
list.
Pick a
At the end of
term
the
that
day-
defines what it is. It's a
Right.
need list, it's a whatever list. You know the intent of what I was stating. Wish list was maybe an inappropriate word. Picking apart that word is not going to get us any further ahead
No,
tonight.
but I just, for
A
the- for the
reasonable
public-
consideration
for the public
list.
sense.
Yes, absolutely.
I know that you didn't mean it to be just wishful thinking, but the public needs to understand that there are needs we are not addressing. You know, it's hard to face a tax increase, but if we had been increasing the taxes a penny or two, 1,000 over a number of years, it'd be a whole lot easier than 15, 25 cents 1,000 in 1 year. But even that is really not that huge a tax bill for most people. It just is not.
I would bet if we were raising it a nickel a year, every year since I got on the council in 2001, we'd be having the same exact conversation tonight.
Exactly.
Probably.
Absolutely the exact same conversation. Maybe there'd be something that would have been bought
we have this same conversation almost every budget here.
every year.
And then just point out, you know, and maybe it's a little unusual, but we took 300,000 out of the fund balance, or we budgeted to take, but we only took 68. And so our expenses did not even, were under budget, and our revenues were over budget, which is good operationally. So there are things that offset some of this. Every time we do go through the budget, there are things that offset this. Not to say that you're not bringing up important points,
Right.
but, you know,
But
if we start with what we have today.
still not addressing the things, the unseen things that
Well,
the staff showed us today.
Here I will agree with you. Those are more important than what somebody might see in a park.
Absolutely.
I mean, you have to maintain at least what you have. It should be a higher priority than the fun things that people might see in their district. Now, the question is, do you need everything that you have? That's a fair question.
That's a fair question.
Or is there a way to reduce space rather than, you know, I think this whole wing of this building is inefficiently used, but I don't know how you change that. But for the paucity of meetings that are held in here, it's an awful lot of space that any market landlord would say this was underutilized and be renting out to someone else and rent a spot once a month for the council to meet and the planning commission. I mean, there's lots of
Well, it is
maybe
cold.
I don't think that's really a budget closer, but there's just a lot of things that ought to be addressed also.
Where I'm coming into parks is just an example, is the value of your community comes from safety, comes from security and the services, the low taxes. Definitely people can borrow more for homes here because we do have the low tax rate, so you can get a higher value, higher property value on the tax rates. So if we can, look at the long term and look at community ratings nationwide and what the drivers are to be one of the top ranked communities nationwide in Wisconsin, things like that, it's getting people to desire to come to Mequon beyond schools and everything else. One of the evaluation points are the services that are available within the community, the parks, and usefulness of the parks is evaluated in that. And you're getting it published. So as people, Mequon's an affluent community. It's executives from within the city of Milwaukee that are choosing a suburb to live in. And if Mequon is continually as a top-rated community within that, based on some of the infrastructure that we're putting into place, they're going to continue to choose Mequon over other communities at potentially a higher price, higher property values, et cetera. So, yeah, 50 grand of park budgets to maybe do some mowing and some things, or to put some useful services in so the kids can gain some usefulness. I mean, you come to Mequon, we want families to come here, but we're not going to invest anything in parks. This was my objection last year budget. I struggle with that.
You don't
The public
invest in
didn't
parks, you
ask for a
spend it.
DPW building. The number one request from me is, hey, I got speeding on my street, how do I get a squad there? They've got limited resources. You can't get a squad out there to, watch for speeders in the community as regularly as you'd want to. That's number one. We do get requests for, hey, we would really like to see some roads being cleared. The good news is those are mostly county roads that the county would be responsible for, taking part on. But city has done a pretty excellent job on that. We have DPW coming online for an increase, we're looking at an increase of taxes, but again, the public safety is going blindly unaddressed. The usefulness of the community for residents of all ages, I'm not talking drop 200 grand on flowers that you're gonna have to replant again next year, or otherwise it's a wasted effort. But restrooms at a park, putting something in budget so that the usefulness of your community and the green space in your community, it's an investment in the green space in your community, is a driver moving forward. Whether you agree with me or disagree with me, that's fine. But, these are things that I'm going to be asking for and talking about at budget time.
Make points, but we are a top-rated community. I think 2 or 3 times a year we get forwarded things that we are very top-rated. I mean, even within the nation, we've been in the ratings lately. And having
improving.
sold a home in my neighborhood recently, I can tell you right now, people are looking at the taxes. That's one reason they're coming to Mequon. So the tax rate is very important to keep an eye on, to attract. That's one of the selling points. And we're also an extremely safe community. We have been listed, oh gosh, it seems like at least 3 times in the last 3 or 4 years. So we have a lot to be proud of the community, as we are, even with this budget that we're working with this year. We've done an extremely good job with staff's help.
And every time the city buys another quality of life capital improvement, whether that's bathrooms somewhere, a new barn somewhere, roads, paving, parking lots rather than using gravel, adding new bike paths. No, those don't just add to the community, they also add to future capital improvement needs, because all those things have to be replaced and improved. Now, maybe that's fine, but that's part of the reason why your capital costs get high, because you keep adding to your capital store. And you want these niceties, and you gotta not only be able to pay for them on the front end, but you've gotta commit to maintaining them in the future, or you shouldn't put them in the front end. I think, like most Americans, we want our cake and eat it too. We don't want to have to pay for it. We just like to have it. And maybe we need to say, we're okay with having a little less. Now I don't think that solves that gap that we're talking about. But you want to keep adding stuff in the parks and stuff, expect that taxes keep going up. Because it's not just the $50,000 you pay now, it's the future. It's every mile of bike path needs to get fixed 7 or 8 years later, seal coated, or 10 or 12 years and replaced 15 or 20 years later. All of those things add to the budget problems.
So the budgeted amount beyond general maintenance in our parks, that dollar was zero.
Is that okay?
There is no doing a little less. They used to
saying
have
don't add more.
10,000 a year that they
But our
had on
parks are
budget.
nice.
And there is a Mequon Community Foundation that was started to help things like that. In fact, one of the finest park buildings, River Barn Park, was built with private funds. And I will say, parks of all things have specific users typically. I'm not sure every single resident always uses every single type of parks. And that is one way. We talk about ways to reduce expenses, or that's one thing that you can raise private funds for, are special things in parks. I mean, it may not work for everything you want, but I do know that's something that does pull heartstrings.
I'm just looking for something. Something.
You can donate. No, I'm just teasing.
Well, I
Totally
said,
teasing. But the Mequon Community Foundation is there to help, and it's getting much stronger. We're getting a much more active community foundation lately.
I'm agreeing with everything that you guys are saying. I'm not disagreeing with your points. I'm just stating that as we're looking at budget, public is asking for certain things, and, you know, their line items are going off pretty quick.
I brought up the idea before, at the last park board meeting, now then back on the park board, they wanted these nice metal benches at the parks, and they were gonna cost $750 to $1,000 a piece. And I said, well, we shouldn't pay for those. We shouldn't pay for those at all. What you ought to do is you ought to go, we've got, I think there's like 22 banks now within a half a mile of Mequon and Port Washington Road. There's banks. You go to the bank and you say, would you like to donate a park bench, and put your plaque on it. There's a lot of different creative ways to get things done by using. You can go to the Chamber of Commerce. Would you like to put the name of your company on here? You know, get the community involved in some of this instead of us sitting there, you know, donate something. Now, Concordia took over the road outside my house. They adopted the highway. Now they're cleaning it up. The kids are out there cleaning it up. You know, get the community involved in some of this. Some of this park stuff you can get the banks. I mean, the banks will spend $10,000 on just about anything these days. And just go knock on the door. Just go knock on the door and ask them. I mean, the company I work for spends tens of millions of dollars, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars on charities all the time. So take a look around at some of the people out in the community who live here and like this community and advertise in this community. There's different ways to do this. There's creative ways to raise money other than just go to the taxpayers and say, we need this.
Maybe the banks would buy us a new major plow.
I was gonna say, well, maybe we really should be talking about the plows and the street sweepers and the things that are of real
Yeah,
interest.
that nobody sees.
Right, they're more
Like the
important.
dorms that our people are staying
jump right in,
overnight
John.
in, that are inadequate.
Couple more points before we close. Rannicky Park, that's what they're doing. The whole outfield fence is full of advertisements from people, from businesses from the community. But two other ways to approach this would be to ask the department heads, and I think we've done this in the past, but give us a priority list of what do you really need? What's most important to you? What money do you absolutely need to be allocated and graded any way you want, and you can come up with a grading system, A, B, C, D. The other way to do that, barring the department heads not saying everything is absolutely 100% necessary, is for the common council to step in and say, I don't think this particular project that this particular board is asking for is all that necessary right now. Maybe next year, maybe 2 years from now, but this year we're going to vote it out. So it's either the department heads coming up with priorities or the common council coming up with the priorities. So you might not see some new bike paths, for example, like we tried to X out last year. That would be one example.
Okay, so I think we have your direction. You're willing to look at pay-go versus borrowing over the longer term, and you'd like us to bring back a budget that maintains a flat tax rate with what those expense reductions would look like. We'd like to see a listing of that.
That was actually 4 to 3, was it? On the pay-as-you-go, instead of borrowing, it was 4 to 3.
over the long, I saw some head nods even before we took the poll that we'd like to kind of look at that longer term.
I think people were confused by the question.
I
There
think-
was some who interpreted it as implementing it now, or implementing it within 5 years. But
Yeah.
that, even if you're gonna implement it at any period of point in time, you should start looking at it now, so you can actually get there
Yeah.
in whatever time frame it is.
We'll be
I'm
entering,
happy to look at anything. I didn't vote on it because I don't think I don't think we had enough information to put a straw poll answer up, and I don't think the question was answerable. So, I didn't want to have anybody read anything into my vote in question 4-3. What does that mean?
I'm just saying that it wasn't you.
Yeah, no
I think when we're analyzing
clear-cut
these things,
decision.
you know, what does it mean immediately?
fine.
What does it mean 5 years down the road? And what does it mean 10 years down the road to the residents? If there's a savings to the residents in the long term without hiking taxes exponentially now, absolutely.
I'll move to adjourn.
Second.
Motion and second to adjourn, all in favor, say aye.
Aye. Are you, did you see this, are you gonna give this to residents?
This is gonna be an ugly budget this year. Ugly.
Did you see the pass out of that thing at Rotary Park? You know, the thing they're gonna have